too for sharing this experience with us. And now we can't wait for them to share their thoughts and answer any Q&A that you guys have. And first, let me introduce Sabina Verenkamp, and she is one of our community members here in KAUST. She actually works with the Child Care Services at Community Life. She organized the triathlon here in KAUST, and she participated in other triathlons, and that's where she met Omar and invited them to come here. Which is a reminder for you guys, if you have any ideas about people that you think are very interesting and stories that are very interesting to bring for WEP or otherwise in KAUST, please speak up and we can do something about it. And now, welcome Sabina.
Okay. I'll just start here. Good afternoon. Thanks for staying. I mean, it's great to have you all here. I just wanted to quickly introduce also our two speakers, the main actors, I guess. I'll start with Omar Nour because I met him personally in Abu Dhabi before during his time as a professional triathlete. Omar is an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and has, by now retired from professional triathlons. But yeah, I think when I met him, he was very much engaged, always also to motivate people to embrace the sport of triathlons. And when I heard about this movie, I thought, well, I have to see what he's doing now on the water and find out, who is this, what are they doing? So I guess to say a bit more about Omar is that, he was working with his brother in a telecommunication company, and he was working very hard and long hours, and realized that this had a serious effect on his health. And so when he realized that, I guess he was about 29, he turned his life around and signed up for his first ever triathlon. And many of you guys here may also have done the same in KAUST with the first, using it as your first triathlon. So this can be, the start of something really cool. And then 2 years later, I guess he earned his pro card and started a professional triathlon career. He was the first Egyptian professional triathlete in history and represented his country on the Olympic triathlon circuit between 2010 and 2017. I remember him as very approachable, easy to converse with, and he has shared his story with many people of all ages. Now with Omar Samra, I've not met him personally before, and today is the first time, but I'm very excited to have him here. I'll just touch on some of his past experiences because he's a very well-known adventurer, entrepreneur, motivational speaker as well, future astronaut, and UN Goodwill Ambassador. He's actually the first Egyptian to climb Mount Everest, the 7 summits, so meaning the 7 highest mountains, of the 7 continents, and to ski both the North and South Pole. So basically this is called, I guess, the Explorer's Grand Slam. And there's only very few people in history that have done the same. He also, in 2017, made the 3 ascents in Antarctica and was given the privilege of naming them after his family. So he's also very well known as a TED speaker, and people know him for his passion and perseverance. I think we've seen some of this now. So when basically I heard about this movie, I thought that it fitted the theme, The Edge, very well. And I asked myself what, these two people that are very successful on land would be doing on a rowing boat, rowing across the Atlantic and being unsupported for 3,000 nautical miles. So please welcome Omar Nour and Omar Samra. And please, do not hesitate to ask questions.
Hi, everyone.
Are there any questions? Anybody wants to start off?
Do you guys enjoy the movie?
Yes, a lot.
Nice. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for the movie and the adventures. It was very inspiring. I was wondering, because mainly this week a lot of talks have been going on. For example, the woman that went to Svalbard, then the woman that climbed the Everest. So what I was thinking, or what I've been gathering, is that physical training eventually gets you there and gets you prepared, but like a mental strength or really trying to control your mind where you're in that situation and when you are already there is maybe what gets you back. And yeah, I wanted to know in this sense, how do you control yourselves when you were there, for example, or yeah, anything on this topic? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Omar and I can try to reflect on this from different angles. Omar being a former professional athlete and me being more of an adventurer, so that brings two different sides to how we see things. I think the first thing is the passion and will and desire to do it. So much of what happens now, at least in the adventure world, is a lot of people sort of seeking the recognition and the brand that comes with being an adventurer, doing certain things. That can take you only up to a certain point, but when you find yourself in a very difficult situation and there is needs sort of a will and push to survive, or things become very difficult and you're completely out of your comfort zone and you need to dig really deep to bring something out to continue, then there needs to be the why of why you do this thing needs to be very, very strong. And I think it's different from every single person. I think most people that gravitate to do these things have a lot of things in common, but usually the reason of why they're doing it is very personal and very, very different. I think once you've taken the decision to do the thing and you have that passion and you have that perseverance to do it, this is when I think, to your question, this is when I think the mental part is supreme. Like the physical aspect is, especially if it's something that's been done before, you can lean on the fact that other people have done it. You can talk to people, you can read narratives, and you can understand exactly how you should prepare your body to be able to do such a thing. But the mental part is always going to be a personal battle, because no two people have the same mental battles going through it, because you have your own personal life, your own personal history, and challenges that is standing between you and doing that thing. So a part of that is the experiences that you've lived that have trained you up until that moment to go through hard situations. But also there's a lot of it where you can actually prepare and train yourself for it. I think you maybe saw a part in the movie when Omar says when we were asking each other a lot of questions and playing the what if game. And the what if game basically is us sitting there and writing 100 questions of all the things that potentially can go wrong. Not all, but as much as we can think of. And trying to pre-answer these questions and pre-determine what we would do in these scenarios. And what that does is allow you to, just when something does happen, and things did happen, obviously, as you saw in the movie, we can kick into a second nature kind of mode or an autopilot mode. Because it's really important, generally in life, when you're going through hard situations, to feel them, and to go through them and to internalize them and to sort them out, obviously, if you don't want to have a traumatic experience afterwards. But when the things are unfolding, it's extremely important to put them in a box, close them up, know exactly where you're leaving the key, and just throw them away, knowing that you're going to come back and open that box later and figure it out. But when you're in the situation, you have to be able to compartmentalize really well.
So basically, he said everything, right? From my perspective, it's a little bit slightly different, but it's a lot of similarities. As a professional athlete, you train your mind every single time you go to train. And the physical aspect one of the coaches that I had actually said something really, really good. He said, did you know that 90% of the training that we do with you guys is not to train your body, but it's to train your mind. It's to remind you of what you're capable of. It's connecting that physical and that mental, right? And I think it's something that's often overlooked. If you have, in sports, if you have a really good coach, right, is somebody who knows, and like Omar said, every individual is different, knows how to activate that for you, how to make that link between the physical and the mental, right? But in my opinion, there is no doubt that the biggest, for example, the biggest crusher of dream isn't your ability not to do it. It's your mind. It's fear, right? And I believe that that is something that we have to train and that we have to continuously push ourselves. There is also a negative talk that happens, right? And this happens to the best people in the world, the people that are most successful, everybody has it, right? There's negative talk, and it's that ability to go through that negative talk. And when you're in a situation like this, for example, right? Like Omar said, it's so stressful, it's so intense that if you sit there and you start to, you know, either analyze everything or feel everything, that you're going to be in trouble. And I believe that there is always ways out. And I've encountered in business, in my personal life, in relationships, in this situation, when a problem is so massive, and I'm sure each and every one of you, in your own way, have experienced that. Something where you do not see a way out, right? A lot of people end up giving up, right? Or hanging on, hoping for it to go away. And we had a motto here, right? Like, is how can we make our situation, I think it's in the movie, right? Like, how can we make our situation a little bit better? But then don't rest on your laurels, right? Like, how can I make my situation a little bit better? I'm not trying to solve the whole thing. I'm just trying to put like the next piece of the puzzle, right? And eventually it goes through. And I think that's all things that you train, right? Like, you train and you do, and you're not afraid in the process of training to fail, right? Obviously, in a situation like this, if we failed, well, we wouldn't be here, right, talking to you guys. But the process of training, we failed a lot, like a lot of times, but many failures, right, that allow you to get stronger and stronger and stronger, or no more, right? So like, to me, the mental aspect is 150% the most important aspect of anything you're going to do in your life. It is the glass ceiling that you're going to put on yourself. It is what's going to limit you from doing something incredible, right? So I would say always focus on that.
Thanks for this amazing movie and for raising awareness about the refugee crisis. I think it's a very important issue, especially in our region. I wanted to ask you about something that happened in the beginning of the movie. So people you know were talking about how unprepared you are to this kind of thing, and that being an adventurer or a triathlete doesn't really prepare you to the challenges of the sea. My question is, after having gone through all of that, what do you think you could have done differently if you were faced with a similar situation in the sea? Or do you think you just did the right thing?
Well, nothing. Let me explain to you something. Like, for me, it's I believe that at some point you have to sign up. Sign up to something that scares you. If your dreams don't scare you, if your goals don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. You're playing it safe. You may achieve some pretty amazing things in life because your abilities are very high, but you're leaving a lot untapped. So these things have to scare you, right? So when we signed up for this, yes, we were very ill-prepared, meaning we knew nothing. Cool. But signing up and saying, cool, let's go on a boat, we'll be fine, right? That doesn't work, right? Like, that's unreasonable. That's not prudent, right? But the next year and a half of our lives, we just worked extremely hard. What the movie doesn't say is we were the ones that actually had the most miles in the boat out of every single team, right? I mean, we're a very different character. I'm very obsessive. I'm very, very obsessive. I'm either on or off. I don't have a dial. And when I'm on, I'm full on. Omar is more balanced than I am. And it's great to have actually these different characters, but we worked super hard. So by the time that we went on that journey, we knew every single centimeter of that boat. We knew each other really well. We pushed each other. It wasn't all roses and unicorns, right? Oh no, like there were arguments between us throughout the process, which is super crucial. If you're being polite with each other, I promise you one thing, when you're out in the ocean and the ocean just like shreds every layer of your character, you won't be polite then. You will not be polite. You will say exactly what you think, right? And if you haven't had practice doing all of these things, in an emergency situation like this, you're dead, right? So I really believe that we worked super hard, and that the string of events that happen to us are extremely unlikely. I mean, these boats capsize. There's actually, the race is happening right now. So there are people out in the ocean right now, and I think the first team is arriving in the next few days, so you guys can go watch them. This has never happened, right? There was a sequence of so many events. So the testament to our preparation in my book is the fact that we're in front of you, right? The fact that we're in front of you means that we were prepared well. Sure, we couldn't have prevented a capsize. We couldn't have prevented the fact that the boat wasn't going to self-right, right? But we survived, and that to me is very important.
Yeah, I think, like if I have to say like one thing, like a good team is a team that's able to have very healthy conflict. I think if you have no conflict in any relationship, you can say for sure that this is not a healthy relationship. The onus fell on me to put the team together because it was my idea. So when I was thinking of who to approach for this, there was a number of, it wasn't a long list because, you know, how many people do I know that are willing to take that much time out to do something so crazy and you know, all of that, but also to have the, you know, the physical attributes, the mental attributes. But I think Omar and I knew each other. We didn't know each other that well, certainly nowhere close to how we know each other now. But I knew enough to know that this is a person that I can have a healthy conflict with, that this is a person that we can get all sort of passionate about a conversation or a discussion, and we would still be able to be logical about it at the end of the day and be constructive, and then sort of simmer down and come up with a conclusion. We didn't see eye to eye in everything. I don't know if you guys saw in the movie, but there's one part when we decide to do this, and it's Omar and I in his office, and he's writing something on a whiteboard, and it says win versus finish. And that was the first conflict that we had, because as Omar is saying, we are very different mindsets, but we're very similar in many ways. So Omar wanted to win the race outright. That's all he cared about, that we were going to compete and we were going to win this race. And what I cared about was the experience. I didn't mind obviously winning, but I wanted to, you know, I didn't care how much time we were out at sea. I didn't care what we ranked, but I want this to be like the greatest experience of our lives. And so this was like basically two people on the complete other ends of the spectrum, and we had to find our way to a middle ground. If I had just kind of brushed, if we're afraid of conflict and we just brushed it under the carpet and says, oh, cool, and one of us just agreed to the other, it will come out in many other ways later and would really hurt us. But we're both very opinionated people. We're both very vocal about our opinions. He talks much more, but I have also my ways of communicating, and we managed to kind of sort through these things out, and I think the team was much better for it at the end.
I gotta say, you make a great team, not just in sports, but also in the way you answer questions from different perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
kind.
That's very nice. Thank you. Did you have a question? Or?
Yeah. Can I ask a question? So first, thank you for the entire Beyond the Raging Sea crew. And thank you, Nour and Samra, Omar Nour and Omar Samra, for making this beyond yourselves and for using your voice for something humanitarian. I just wanted to ask, so I'm very familiar with the conventional workplace environment, and with that comes very addressed and clear work ethics. As full-time adventurers or athletes, what are do you have ethical boundaries in that environment, and how are you ethically challenged in your day-to-day athletic activities or life?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, just one clarification. We're not full-time. I think there was a time when Omar was a full-time professional athlete. There was a time when I was dedicating quite a big chunk of my life to adventure pursuits, but I was never full-time on it. Just of the nature of the beast, it's not something that you could necessarily make a complete living out of. But we face these type of ethical dilemmas, obviously, in our workplace. We both run our own companies, but as well during a role like that. I think not necessarily an ethical dilemma, but we were very much intentful on attributing this journey to a cause that we really believed in. For me, it was, from the get-go, I knew that I wanted to do it about the plight of refugees. There was obviously clear similarities in terms of the nature of the pursuit, because it had something to do with the body of water. There was a crossing involved, and so on and so forth. But a lot of the people that we were with, because obviously the team wasn't just Omar and I. There was a wider team that was helping us put this whole thing together. We were advised practically against attributing this journey to that cause. Not for any other reason, but people said that practically it will not make your chances of getting a sponsorship strong. But also because people associate that cause with being something that's quite emotionally heavy, and this will sort of detract from your audience and so on and so forth. But we decided anyway that we were going to, this again was something that we had to discuss, and we decided together that we were going to go through with that. Not necessarily, it's not an ethical dilemma, but it's sort of an approach. We decided, for better or worse, at that time, that we were going to go give it a try anyway. Fortunately, DHL Express, who were the sponsor at the end, we did in the end find the sponsor that was overjoyed that we had that cause. So, the thing that I always think is that if you have something that you really believe in, and if that something is a bit different and quite extreme, the majority probably might not support you. But if you try long enough and hard enough and knocking on enough doors, eventually there's going to be someone that's going to back you. And all you need is one, really. You need one person to back you or one entity to back you. And once they do, usually they pave the way for others, because others will look at this entity and say, well, if this person has taken that risk and if they believe in it, that's good enough for me to do the same. So, yeah, I don't know if you have another reflection on that.
I mean, it's a super interesting question. We've never been asked that before, to be honest. But just to build on what Omar had said about, choosing the cause, the other thing about that specific thing was, well, are you guys comparing yourselves to refugees? Right? And that was a huge thing. Like, you guys should not make a movie where you compare yourselves to refugees. You guys are privileged people that did not have, and it was super interesting. We're like, no, but that's not what we mean. And then like, no, it doesn't matter. And I don't know if I'm skirting around your question of ethics, right? But I believe that there was a moment there where we had to sit down and be like, okay, we could get slaughtered over this, right? Like people could end up turning against us. But our ethics and our values were as such that when we had signed up on this, and we decided that we were going to go all the way. And we believe that this was a very unique way of shedding light on a very important cause that has been around for a while, and we've been desensitized. The thing about human beings, and this is true for this experience, and this is true for the refugee crisis, this is true for anything, we forget. We forget everything. Our brain has this amazing ability to erase things that we do not like, things that are painful, things that will scar us, right? And Omar and I actually, even today, during the film, when we were sitting over here, we were talking, and Omar said to me, he's like, hey, I want to try to remember exactly how many passes the boat went by, and talk about the details of each pass. And I said, cool, let's do that this evening. Because one of the things that we agreed on is the feeling that we had when we came back to shore. We felt amazing. You know, money, power, influence, fame, the last few seconds, you don't think about any of that. Nothing. So when we came back, the water tasted better, the air was amazing, the colors, the food, the food was just the best, right? And the thing is, we knew that over time, we were going to forget. Over time, we were going to start getting stressed out about traffic. And over time, things that mean absolutely nothing would start to, again, gain strength, right? And so we are actively trying to keep that memory. Now, in terms of the refugees, there's so much news of bodies washing on the shore, pictures of children. We became desensitized. People were just literally like, oh, it's another refugee thing, and we don't want to listen to it. So we saw it as an amazing opportunity to give it a different twist, to maybe talk to a different audience. We were hoping that this film, okay, wouldn't be just for the die-hard people that already know about the refugee crisis. We were hoping it's like, oh, cool, it's an adventure film. Let's go see them, right? And two people that you can relate to, and all of a sudden we all the way at the end, just squeeze in like, hey, now you related to them, this is all the same, right? So, yeah, well, I hope I sort of answered your question.
Yeah, let me just say one thing which is not immediately clear to people who watch the film. Like, we never had an intention of making a movie. Like, when we set out, that wasn't even part of the plan. I mean, we wanted to shoot a few things for, like, you know, for digital, because we had a sponsor and all of that, but it was only after that we came back that we fortuitously were in a room with a director that actually dedicated a big part of his career to making movies about the refugee crisis, that saw something in it. And he basically said, listen, if you give me the opportunity, I can make a documentary out of this, and I can take you to this film festival, and so on and so forth. And that's when the dilemma that Omar said appeared. When people started saying, well, you know, if you make that movie, people are going to misconstrue it, and they're going to say, you know, you guys are coming from a very different background, and so on. And which is why it was very important for us in the film to highlight that these are two different worlds. I think the only part and the only reason our movie makes sense for the refugee crisis is to basically say, and this is why it comes at you at the end. You think the movie's finished, but then there's this 10 minutes at the end, which basically says, well, you connected with these two people who are more similar to you, and you felt something to their mothers and all the people around. You maybe want to question, why is it that you don't feel the exact same thing about refugees that are, making these crosses every single week since the movie was made? And obviously, you know, when COVID happened, the media attention just decided to focus on something else. And then it was the war, and then it's this and that. And the world moves on, but unfortunately, this crisis continues. And in some ways, it gets even worse because the attention has moved on. You guys saw, like, the movie The Swimmers came out almost at the same time that our movie was also picked up on Netflix. And Sara Mardini, for example, is facing a 25-year jail sentence because she was one of the activists in Lesbos trying to receive the refugees when they cross on the other side. So I think this is a massive, massive issue. It's being aggravated and will be aggravated more in the future years because of the climate crisis. It's going to produce more refugees, and I don't think the world is doing nearly enough. So you can potentially interpret our journey in reality in terms of the objectives that we started with of wanting to cross to the other side. We failed. We didn't make it to the other side. And that journey and that chapter could have just closed then, but actually somehow because of that part of the journey, that cause, looking back at it now, reflecting, we've achieved something with that journey that we could have never have dreamed of. And it's one of the reasons why when we're asked the question, would you ever do it again? We don't feel like we want to, because what came out of it you know, with the film, with the podcast that we did about it, the opportunities to spotlight on the refugee crisis is something that means so much more to us than getting to the other side.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the elaborate explanation.
You're welcome.
So who is next? I don't know. You have been waiting, I think, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi. I was thinking, after what's happened to you in the sea, do you plan on going back? And if not, what's your next adventure?
It's funny, like, this is like the question we always get, and my immediate reaction in life, in anything, is let's go back. Let's go back immediately. I don't even think about it. It's not even a conscious decision. It's just whenever I feel pressure, I go back, right? And I'm a big person who believes in failure. Like, failure is one of the most important things in life. You cannot learn without failure, right? And so I don't think of something like this as negative. I don't think of failure as negative. I simply think of it as a step towards the success, right? So everybody fails, and the ones that succeed are the ones that never stop failing, right? They kept on going, and the ones that end up failing, they're the ones that let the fail stand and let it go, right? So my immediate reaction, I'm very black and white, and I see things very, you know, in that way. But in this situation, we promised each other. Actually, so the first thing is we came back and we're like, definitely I'm never like going anywhere near a boat, right? And then after things like started to quiet down a little bit, we're like, hey, do you think we should do it again? And the competitive side is like starts to kick in, and we said, no, you know what we're gonna do? For 1 year, there is no conversations about doing actually anything. That was Omar's suggestion. He was like, let's not talk about anything, like no adventures. And I'm like, that's a good idea. Let's just do 1 year of just eating, right? And enjoying like family and just like connecting at a different level. And it was such a crucial year to take off, because if we had not taken off that year, I promise you, I would have signed up again, for sure. There's just no two ways about it. And I'm not sure the why that Omar talked about earlier, if my why would be strong, if my why would be the correct why. Just because something pushes at you doesn't mean that you have to push it back, right? And after that year off, what I discovered that there is no world where I wanted to do it again. And the reason is, I'm a very competitive human being. I wanted to break the world record, right? And the world record was 40 days and 5 hours. And I knew exactly everything. And I trained so hard, right? Like, I trained myself like to be able to do that. And we realized that when you're out on the boat, you're powerless. You're a speck. If you have a year where the winds or the waves are not pushing you, it doesn't matter how fit you are, how strong you are, you cannot fight the ocean, literally. So you're not gonna break the record. So all of a sudden, as an athlete, as a triathlete, for example, let's say 90% of the outcome is in my control and 10% is not. Like in triathlon, somebody falls on the bike in front of me, I fall over, that's, you know, but I can control 90% of the elements, shall we call it. In an experience like this, it's flipped. You maybe can control 10%, and 90% is completely out of your control. So then I realized, wait, so my training and my activities don't have an impact on the outcome. So that was the first thing, I'm like, eh. And then the second thing was, hold on a second. So many people, in comparison to other things, very few, but in the world of ocean rowing, it's not, I mean, it's difficult, but it's not unusual for people to cross an ocean. Most people just make it, right? Like, for example, our boat was abandoned, and it was found a year later, 1 year later, in the Bahamas, right? And it was just destroyed, right? But the thing is, everything pushes you that way. So if you don't want to push hard and you take it easy, you're going to get there. So making it in a crazy way, and I know you're going to look at me like I'm strange, is not that big of a deal. You can do it. Anybody in this room can do it, and with very little training, right? How uncomfortable it is and how long it will take is a different story, right? And so for me, I just felt like I don't need to do that next one, right? Like the way that the outcome with this film and the way the happiness that I felt when we got on the boat and we hugged each other, that happiness, I promise you, no one that actually crossed it felt it. That was the most raw, authentic, I can't even explain it. It just came from the inside happiness. Like nothing mattered in that second except that hug. Like nothing mattered, right? And so even making it to the other side, I think I'll be content, but I will never feel that. And so for now, and you never say never, for now, I cannot see myself signing on again. Maybe Omar would.
Thank you.
You can't do it alone, right?
First of all, I think I can speak for a lot of people in the room here by firstly saying thank you for sharing such a personal experience that I'm sure was even traumatic in a lot of different ways, and it's a lot easier to just put it up, like put it in a box and keep it somewhere where you don't have to address those feelings. So thank you for sharing that experience. You touched on a previous question about how your idea of using the plight of refugees as kind of the overarching mission, or not mission, but cause that you were championing, trying to make regular people kind of connect with you and then use that as a segue to demonstrate the relationship that we also have with refugees that we've kind of closed off because of how desensitized we've become from the issue. How do you feel, based on your efforts, has there been a change, if any, or to like kind of examples of a tangible change that's happened as a result of your efforts?
I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, there is the change in our world. So I think initially it has to start with, I mean, I already started feeling very, very strongly towards the cause. Omar even says in the film that in the beginning it wasn't exactly the same for him. It's not like he was, adverse to the cause, but it's. But both of us have experienced a massive sort of, sense of belonging to the cause. So if I was already quite passionate about it, it's been on a different level, because what we've experienced is extremely different than what refugees go through, but it's enough to be able to extrapolate the feelings of sort of fear, anxiety, stress, pressure that someone would undertake or go through to go on a journey like that. And so then to think that someone would make a choice to go through that with no experience, no training, with smugglers, which is a much more dangerous situation, knowing that they have no other option, knowing that their problems might just start when they get to the other side, or they might be sent back to exactly where they were fleeing from, and therefore their situation is compoundedly worse, requires such as a whole different level of bravery, which for me necessitates like a whole different level of activism and action towards that cause. So from our own sphere, in terms of myself, Omar, obviously you can reflect on that. Our families, I've definitely seen a big shift. Friends, family, because we're constantly talking to them about the cause. They obviously feel very much towards us, and then they're introduced to this world through that. So that definitely it's been a huge shift. I mean, obviously can't claim that there has been a shift, a world shift towards it. I already said just earlier that I think the crisis has worsened since the movies come out, since we've done The Crossing, because obviously that's a massive, a global issue. There is obviously, some other movies that came out. I mentioned The Swimmers and others. That's a step in the right direction, but I really do think that there's so much more that needs to be done. So I think if there's been an influence, a change in our kind of small sort of sphere, There's a lot more that needs to be done. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Omar said. And then for me, like, I had, as an athlete, I was, training 8 hours a day, eating super healthy. I had like 4% body fat. I mean, I was a professional. And towards the end of my career, I got diagnosed with diabetes. And I'm like, how is that even possible, right? And so I'm insulin dependent. So at age like 36, and so like that was a cause that was very near and dear to my heart because I had just been diagnosed. And actually all the doctors said there's no way that you can embark on something like this. And you can imagine, of course, the conversation after that. But so, like Omar said, I wasn't that connected to the cause. So I wanted to sort of maybe shed light on diabetes. But then after we talked about it more and more and had some of our, more deeper conversations, it made sense. It made sense to talk about refugees, right? Now, the impact that we had, in addition to what Omar said, in my opinion, the crisis is so big, it's exactly what I had said in my previous answer. A lot of people, the problem is so big, you cannot see a solution. So most people just say, let's not do anything about it, right? Unless it affects you. Unless all of a sudden you're the refugee, or your family member or somebody that you love becomes a refugee. It's so easy to just put it to the side. And in my opinion, this is a speck in the desert, right? Like a speck of sand in the desert to hopefully have a little step in the right direction, right? And we have had some media pick it up that would not have picked up the story, but they picked it up because it was an adventure thing. And so clearly what the impact is, did we solve it? No, of course not. But it doesn't mean that we don't do a step in the right direction, right? And hopefully then build on that. And like Omar had mentioned, we did that step in the right direction, and then we were approached by different entities, and Omar had different ideas about, for example, our podcast. So then we created a podcast. So it's a 6-series podcast that you guys can listen to it. It's called Beyond the Raging Sea, State of Mind. And one of them is about refugees, right? So another speck, right? Another speck. And then eventually, who knows which one of you guys out in the audience today is not moved and doesn't add their own speck, right? And so like, I don't think it's one of these things that you just, boom, solved, check, refugee crisis. Next thing, what are we gonna do, right? Like, it's one of these things you just keep on pushing. And clearly for me, from my perspective, I see that we're at least moving somewhat the needle in the right direction.
Thank you. Yeah, can you?
Yes, now I'm on. So Omar, first of all, thanks both Omars for a great movie, very inspirational, and you definitely haven't lost your inspirational edge since we met. Okay, so I have a comment first. So I saw clearly also I found it so amazing, that huge ship. The captain, I mean, you could see the emotion, and I've been out at sea, and I know how difficult it is to maneuver a vessel, small vessel in the wind, right? And to have a 200-meter vessel pick you up in these conditions, I thought it was incredible. But okay, the question was about something else, and you said it, 1.5 years of preparation, right? For the 3 weeks or so, I can't remember how long you were out. But so that long journey of preparing, right, step by step, there's many times something goes wrong and you think you can't make it. I can't make this, this is not working. How did you guys get beyond this? How do you deal with the little disasters?
So thank you for your compliment in the beginning, and thank you for your comment. And Look, I mean, I'll tell you this. Well, first about the ship, and just a response to your comment that's a little bit funny. We were out there, right? And this ship comes, and we actually ended up having dinner with the second officer and third officer a year later, right? A year later, and they told us how scared they were, right? Like how they're like, look, we never ever train for something like this. Nobody, you know, the safety protocol doesn't talk about like picking up a little life raft in the middle of the ocean, which was really funny. And during the rescue mission, which is not in the film, right? They're going, and every time they go, you hear like different noises and sounds, and we heard yalla yalla yalla. Look, listen, I love my people. We're Egyptian. We love the people. But the last language I want to hear is Arabic. I want to hear German. I want to hear Swiss German. Achtung, systems, boom, boom, boom. You're back on the boat. Yalla, yalla, habibi. No, I don't want to hear this. And I looked at Omar. I was like, wait a second. Omar, are you telling me we found the only Arabs? Like, we're in the middle of an ocean, and we're drowning, and we found the other Arabs? Like, is that possible? Right? And the funny thing is, one time when Omar decided, like, that's it, right? And we zipped the thing closed. We could talk to them, so we're yelling, and Omar's like, "Wait, guys, are you guys Egyptian?" And they go, "Yeah, we're Egyptian. Are you guys Egyptian?" We're like, "Yeah, we're Egyptian." They're like, "What are you doing here?" And we're like, "Not now. You're gonna kill us later. Like, let's talk about it later." But it was a really a funny story in the midst of this drama. So the captain ended up being Egyptian. The first officer, the second officer, all Egyptians. And can I tell you? And one of the things is we're alive because of those guys, right? Like, we are alive because those guys never gave up. And they were scared. They were really, really scared. So it's like a funny little story. Now, in terms of how do we not quit when things go wrong, guys, when you go to the gym, and I don't know if anybody goes to the gym and, like, let's say lifts weights, you take it to exhaustion. You see those big guys, right? And they have the little spotter behind them, and they're like, they get to the point where they're shaking and they can't do the weight anymore. And then the person doesn't pick up the weight; they just go a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Let me help you a little bit, right? We understand that in order for the muscle to grow, you have to take it to failure. Very easy. You want to get bigger, you have to work out to failure. Now take these things now into sports, onto anything public, into personal relationship, business relationships, take them into any aspect, and we avoid failure. We avoid it. We look at it, it's painful, it's embarrassing. We don't wanna sign up to anything and then announce it, right? And for me, I'm the opposite. I want to announce it immediately. I think I announced I was going to the Olympic Games when I was still overweight, right? And people were like, what's up? Because that's important for me. That fear of failing, you can use that as fuel to wake up at 4 a.m. to go swimming, right? That fear of failing. But if I'm quiet and I never even mentioned it, if I never even announced my Olympic aspirations, right? Well, at 4 a.m. when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit tired, maybe I stay in bed. Nobody knows anyways, right? So I like to have public announcements. I like to say what I'm about to do, and I like to fail publicly, hopefully not too many times in the same exact way. Like, I hope that I learn from failure, but failure to me became a very necessary part of developing, and the only way that I know how to succeed, the only way I know, my most successful businesses, the two of them were littered with failure along the way. And for me, it's something that's the only way that I know how to do it, right? And so when you're preparing for something like this, for example, in sports, you don't want to put targets or put load that's way, way above what you're able to do and fail in a catastrophic manner, right? In a way that maybe it will injure you. Like, sometimes you mess it up. You sometimes have to go over the edge. The only way to know that where the edge is to go over it. Or else, how do you know that, that that's the edge? And so increasing the load slowly and constantly, like, so we fail and we increase the load again, we try it again, we try the same thing, we take a step back. And I think it's just that mentality, that approach that no, failure is not negative, and you're not going to wake up every day being like, yeah, let's go do this, whatever it is, whether it's work, whether it's studying. Some days you're very motivated and other days you're not. Right? And if you don't look at failure negatively, I think for me that's it's easier.
Yeah, let me just add one little thing. Let's say we're in the ocean, you're in the thing, and you're making decisions constantly. I think it's important to make a distinction between, let's say, call it like a tactical decision and a strategic decision. So a strategic decision might be a decision that, you know, do I want to continue or not with this thing? It's like a bigger kind of overarching decision. A tactical decision is a decision you're making where you're just changing little things along the way. So, you know, we're going to change the rowing shifts, or now the water maker has broken, so we're now going to do this or that or whatever. And I think when you decide to embark on a journey or embark on a pursuit or a career or a PhD or whatever, you're making this decision. Hopefully you've weighed all the outcomes. So you've sat there, you've applied your mind, you've done research, you've talked to other people, and you've made the decision to go on with this thing, and I've announced it. Like Omar said, I'm a big fan of this as well. And you've decided that, you know, I'm dedicating the next, you know, 2 years of my life, 1 year of my life, 5 years, few weeks, whatever, to this pursuit. Now, it's really important then when things start to go wrong, when you're in the journey, to realize that you're now not against making a decision of whether do I continue or not continue. That decision has already been made, knowing exactly that you are going to potentially be in a storm, potentially you're going to capsize. Like, I cannot sign up to something and then just look at all the positives that can come out and just decide to be like, well, hopefully everything works out. Like, I need to look at, when I climbed Everest, for example, I knew how many deaths there were, I knew how many people get injured, I knew all of these things, and I had to make a decision knowing that this could happen. So, for example, in 7 weeks into the Everest expedition, we were the first team to encounter a dead body. The guy had just perished 10 minutes before we got there. And we had to make a decision. This was already also a situation where we played the what-if game as well. And we knew that the decision that we're making now is not a decision where we quit the expedition or continue, but it's a decision whether we want to continue that day or maybe we want to go back to camp, regroup, and then come back the next day. So a lot of people fall into a trap where they quit, where they make a rash decision because a lot of stress that they're falling under or a lot of difficult situations, and they decide, no, I'm not up to this, and then quit the entire thing, entirely, when actually that's not the decision that's being asked of you. The situation is not asking that of you right now. It's basically asking you to employ all your training, all your preparation in the situation that you knew already signing up that it might unfold. So if you quit during a thing, and obviously there's always a threshold of safety as well, where you know that if you pass that, then you action the lever to quit or to ask for an emergency sort of recovery or whatever. But within that, you always have to be, very cognizant of that, because often too many people quit when actually, if they look back to the situation, they might look and say, maybe that was a rash decision. So I think it's important to make that distinction as well.
I also had a question, like in the beginning of the movie you said, sort of you were flying to the US and you were looking at this body of water and you said, well, let's, get on the water. But how did that thought and then, what actually came out of it, that it was a rowing thing and not like a sailing or, there's different options, obviously. How did that process take place before even, joining forces or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm somebody who's like a huge, I'm very passionate about nature, about being in the outdoors and so on. And if I had to dream of being which era I would be born in, it would definitely be an era where things were just analog. I really like this idea of things being done kind of like in the old ways. It's a romanticized notion that I have, and so when I was thinking about crossing the body of water, I always went to, I don't want to use a motor, I don't want to use a sail. What if you could do this just employing our own resources? But I think what's important, to reflect on here is is that sometimes, like when we have a goal, we believe, or when we have an idea. So this was like, the interesting is where this idea come from. Like all of a sudden I'm on a plane watching a movie and I've never rowed in my life. And all of a sudden an idea comes to row on the Atlantic Ocean. That's just, so this is a question I don't have the answer to. Where does this come from? Like, is it something coming from the heavens? Is it something coming from like a subconscious movie I've watched or something? Like, I don't know where, but the idea was planted. And then over the next days and weeks, I tried to get this idea out of my head. And I just couldn't, just kept coming up. And then I just knew that the only way, knowing myself, I knew that the only way to get it out of my head is to actually try and do this thing. But let's just take it, if whatever that situation is, whether it's crossing the ocean, whether it's your next career move, whatever dream that you have, I think we always believe that there is a responsibility on us to convince other people of why that dream makes sense, and we don't actually have that responsibility. But the crazy thing is that we also think that we have a responsibility to explain and convince ourselves that that dream makes sense. But that's also ridiculous, because you know, the source of these dreams, these things that Omar said, if it has to scare you, your brain is actually an organ in your body that's been designed to keep you safe and to understand that if you touch fire, it burns you so you don't do it again. So you cannot rely on the brain to make a decision about something that's potentially unknown or dangerous, right? So you're using the wrong tool in your body you're not doing it for its purpose. It's like it's like the old adage of like taking a leap of faith. So you have to, let's say I'm here and the edge is this stage. I can use my brain to get me to the edge of the stage because maybe there's a table here, there's this there, I need to navigate, I need to move there. But once I get to the cliff, if I think about it for however long I need to, my brain is never gonna give me the prompt to jump, right? And so if that jump off the cliff is you going after your dream, and you get stuck in trying to make a table of the pros and cons and waiting for that thing to make sense, you're never going to do anything. And that's why we all get stuck in this place in the middle where we're just incapable or living our life in this band, this very sort of comfortable band. So in order to make that leap of faith, they call it, you have to rely on something else. So you're going to have to rely on your gut, your intuition, your passion, something else that's intangible. But the problem is that, unfortunately, because of how modern society has become, there is so much emphasis on the mind. You know, the mind is supreme always. So you have to negotiate with your mind, convince the mind, and then you're allowed to do the thing. But what if we actually looked at this other intangible thing as just as important? The mind I use once I've made the decision to go and row the ocean. Now let's use the mind, let's make the lists, let's figure out everything that we need to do, and let's attack them one by one. But the decision to go and do the thing has to come from somewhere else. And that's something that requires, I won't say training, because it's not something that necessarily takes time, it's a mindset shift. And so once you can actually make that decision right now as you're sitting here and basically decide, I've had this dream, I've had this idea that I've been putting off. Everything in my body, when I think about it, gets excited, and I feel that that's the thing I want to do. But as soon as I start thinking about it and rationalizing it, it doesn't make any sense. Let me go back to that feeling, that excitement that I feel when I get this thing, and let me attach a lot of weight and reverence to that thing because it's so important, and actually follow through with it. And I think that's really important because I see so many people that have a lot of people come talk to me about a lot of dreams they've had, a lot of ambitions, a lot of things that are just left there on the table. And I think it's because we don't necessarily, attach as much weight as we should to that fire inside of us.
And I wish he just would watch a movie like everybody else on planes.
Yeah.
Is there any final questions, or everybody? Good. Well, thank you so much for coming out here and watching the movie with us and having the discussion. And thank you both for being here. It's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
into the unknown and do something sometimes without knowing how the outcome will be.
There is nothing exciting about a safe bet or the middle of the road.
If you're not on the edge, you're taking up too much space.
Find the strength to overcome the challenges ahead.
There's an incredible human being left for you to discover once you reach the edge.
If you want to make a difference in life, be a scientist.